What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the penultimate edition of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast here on the Smark Out Moment channel, where we're on episode 36, this long journey. I'm your host, as always, Callum Wiggins, and joining me, as per usual, Robert DeFelice.
Callum, it's basically over. Like, we're here. We've got a couple of more good things to cover, but we found a way out of no way out, and now we're almost at the end.
Yeah, it is pretty much no way out for this podcast. It's the days are dwindling, as it were. This was intended to be the final episode of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast all those months ago, because we're going to be talking about it a little bit in the news section. This is where this is his last show in terms of being part of the creative team of SmackDown. But we decided, why not extend it another week, because that's when Paul Heyman, the character, gets written off for a few months. So we get to see him getting beaten up in a steel cage by Brock Lesnar.
I wonder why they subject themselves to this. Like, obviously, we have now, in the course of this journey, seen Paul Heyman's run on Monday Night Raw end, and I wonder why they subject themselves to, like, let's keep going for this.
Yeah, I'm not too. I mean, I guess it's just a case of doing stuff that is familiar and they feel like they can do. Like, oh, we tried it with Paul Heyman. It seemed to be okay for a while. Let's bring him back. And then Vince realized what it's like to work with Paul Heyman.
And then Vince remembers, oh, I don't like people who, are really going to challenge my vision. I need people who are going to work within my vision.
Exactly. But of course, before we get started into the actual show itself, we do invite you to leave a like on the video if you're watching on YouTube, or drop a comment below. Let us know what you've been thinking about the series in general, or this particular episode of SmackDown, which of course will be the February 27th edition of SmackDown from 2003. Other than that, if you were listening through one of the other podcast feeds where it's like iTunes or Stitcher or something of that ilk, then do leave a rating or a review or anything else that you can figure out to do on those platforms. On the YouTube side of things as well, there is the playlist all the way stretching back to episode 0, way back in June when we started this series. And of course, we also invite you to check the link in the description for the WWE Network while you still can.
Right, because it will transfer over. But if you're outside of the United States, this doesn't really apply to you.
Exactly. You guys are cool, like me. We're outside of the United States. Let's talk some news about 2003 in February. So, big news, might as well just lead it on with it. This is where Paul Heyman is removed from the creative process. So he was removed from the SmackDown writing team, which was now to be headed up by David Lagana and Bruce Pritchard.
So Lagana, I feel like I learned more about Lagana after his time with WWE. Like, he did some stuff with TNA. He did a lot of the legwork for the National Wrestling Alliance reboot, which is why when he was outed in the Speaking Out movement, the NWA all but stopped, because Lagana was doing so much of it. I don't really know of any ideas in WWE I can point to and go, well, that was a Dave Lagana.
No, I can't say too much about that as well. I mean, he was a Heyman protege pretty much, so he pretty much tried to follow suit with a lot of what Heyman was attempting to do, but obviously put it more in line with Vince's vision. Basically, what they mentioned in The Observer is the fact that he spent a year writing for Friends.
Oh, what? Well, okay. So that's even more interesting to me. Like, what Friends storylines can we point to this guy? Because that'll say a lot about his writing.
I mean, I can't remember what season that he would have been working for, because Friends went on for quite a while. So it could have been any one of those seasons.
I feel like it had to be one of the latter. Like,
or when it got worse.
The show, yeah. The show ends in 2004. He's here in 2002, so maybe that 98, 99-ish. That's very interesting to me. I'll have to do some research on that.
And of course, Bruce Pritchard, who is still with the company and still, well, obviously took a time away in TNA for a little period of time in other places, but he's now back in WWE and, heading up SmackDown.
He is responsible for a single episode of Friends.
Okay.
And it is in season 6. It is called The One Where Ross Meets Elizabeth's Dad. I am not that up on Friends, so I couldn't tell you the plot of this, but I think it's interesting that he is literally only responsible for one episode, and that was enough for his resume to go, "You're hired." Here you go.
Well, he was on the. It means that he spent one season on the writing staff of Friends, but he only contributed to one of them, presumably, in terms of one episode of the season. But, yeah, I'm trying to picture that one because I have watched every episode of Friends. So, but I can't recall that one specifically. I know who Elizabeth was, obviously. That's Ross's girlfriend, soon to be second wife. But I can't recall that particular episode off the top of my head.
Now, was Elizabeth the one that he, during the wedding, literally says, "I, Ross, take thee, Rachel"?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, it's the British one. So
so Friends, I don't know, like, it obviously, much like wrestling in this era, has its naysayers nowadays, but I always thought it was a pretty good show, and I think its legacy speaks for itself.
oh yeah, I never had too much of an issue with it. I know there are certain aspects of what they were saying for that point of time was like, yeah, it's stuff that now put into a more quote unquote woke generation that we are now doesn't really hold up. But yeah, it was. I think it was a fine show.
Yeah, I think it's a shitty reality, but like everything is cringe now, and to an extent, it should be. Like, we should always be growing and looking back at the past and going, "That kind of sucks."
Yeah, and of course, it went on too long,
which is a flaw that many television shows have.
Yeah,
including wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. But the other big thing that was coming out in terms of the creative side of things, we'll talk a little bit more about Heyman afterwards, but they decided they were going to pull the trigger on the plans to split pay-per-views now. So the intention was to, at least at this point in time when The Observer was written, the first quote-unquote brand exclusive pay-per-view would have been King of the Ring 2003, sorry. But of course, King of the Ring doesn't happen because they decide to scrap the concept altogether and they go Bad Blood instead.
I like that the time frame is exactly right. I think that it sucks that we lost King of the Ring.
Yeah, of course.
It's one of like the greatest pay-per-view concepts ever, and I think it's one of the easiest. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that in this era of thematic pay-per-views for the last 10 years, we haven't seen it come back.
No, it would be a good one to use, especially because it's something that you can do as a special pay-per-view event that doesn't have a lot of consequence surrounding it. You could just build an entire show around that tournament, and it'd be fine. But yeah, we'll see whether it does come back in this new Peacock era where pay-per-views really don't matter anymore.
Yeah, at least like I don't know how we haven't gotten like, hey, and on Peacock we're bringing back Saturday night's main event once every quarter. It's simple. Like, these are simple things you can do.
So the wrestlers were officially told that Heyman is still on the creative team, but his role has been changed to a consultant for both Raw and SmackDown, which basically meant he's not on the creative team anymore.
Isn't that literally what they did to him this time too?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
Meltzer, talking in The Observer, says that Heyman is said not to be good at is not good to deal with when his decisions get overruled. He also has a different philosophy of what wrestling is than Vince McMahon, even though he recognises that in the end of the day, the show is McMahon's. And
we can all understand that Heyman is directly speaking to Dave Meltzer, yes?
I wouldn't doubt it too much. I imagine that he's probably spoken to Meltzer on multiple occasions.
I would imagine, since so much of his core following in ECW was this audience, that he had a very direct line to Dave Meltzer.
He also was getting into frequent and more public political battles backstage as well, so it's pretty much the writing was on the wall for Heyman. I mean, we spoke about it last month about him and the Raw writer, I can't remember.
Is that Gerrit?
Yeah, Gerrit's getting into a heated argument and both getting suspended for a week. So yeah, it was pretty much this was coming for Heyman.
Imagine having such a frustrating job that you're literally just like, you're not athletically inclined at all, and you're just like, fuck it, let's fight. Like, let's just fuck it.
Also in The Observer itself, Meltzer talks about the differences between the Raw and SmackDown presentation. basically talk about the fact that SmackDown did get a boost in the ratings over Raw, which was like obviously an excellent sign for them because they were pretty much working in an uphill battle going against the quote unquote wrestling show on Mondays, which had the much longer tenure than SmackDown and still managing to pull in better ratings. And then also due to the fact that SmackDown was creating better characters than Raw was and taking characters that were bad on Raw and making them good on SmackDown. Which I think we pretty much can agree with. Basically, we've been through the entire journey and we can see that firsthand, really.
But like Raw will go, yeah, but Batista, and just coast on that for its entire.
So Raw really has only two to lean on, which is Batista and Randy Orton. And if you want to argue this as well, Devon Dudley. But that's because they made the stupid decision to split them up in the first place.
I think we've seen the leaning on Randy Orton and Batista, and even to an extent, John Cena. Because as soon as John Cena wins that championship, Raw takes him and doesn't let him go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, I mean, SmackDown takes credit in terms of what they've done into the good characters. We're looking at people like, I'm saying like new characters on the screen. So that is Cena, that is Jamie Noble and Nidia. That is, I'm trying to think of like other ones off the top of my head and stuff like that, but they made bigger stars out of Benoit and the Guerreros. Rey Mysterio came in.
We can joke about him all we want, but Billy Kidman, was a featured part of this journey.
Yeah. Like Matt Hardy got his new character and he got that over well. Obviously, Lesnar's the big star in this entire thing. They've made Angle a more serious competitor.
Yeah, Raw, I think, was under the assumption that they were going to take the established stars and just dominate over SmackDown, and that blows up in their face.
Yeah, but that's pretty much the end. So the next episode we watch of SmackDown for obviously the March 6th edition won't be written by Heyman, or at least not directly written by Heyman. He won't be the head writer for that one. I assume he quote unquote consults on it. But it's the last time.
I imagine that he wrote the majority of it, though. I mean, if your planning is enough in advance, yeah, I can assume that Heyman did most of it.
But it's the idea that that was the last time we see him on TV until late 2003 when he comes back as the general manager of SmackDown.
So, one thing that we've covered a little bit, but we won't cover the bulk of, is Brock Lesnar, without Paul Heyman, is about to become almost too goofy of a babyface. Like, if you've seen it, you've seen it. There is footage of him literally kissing Kurt Angle. And it's like, when you think about Brock Lesnar without Paul Heyman, it's almost like you're missing the linchpin to the whole package.
Yeah, they made him too vanilla a babyface after that because they decided that, because realistically, and we've spoken about this at length, so I don't want to delve into it too much, but WWE only knows how to book certain kinds of baby faces. And the one that they lean on entirely most of the time is it's either the Hulk Hogan or it's Steve Austin.
I think, and when you can't have a definitive one of those, you get this weird amalgamation that is almost like trying to be Dwayne Johnson, where you can be a badass and also super goofy. Brock Lesnar being goofy only works in one instance for me, and that's either dancing the mariachi or boombox dancing. If he's not dancing as a conceited heel, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Heyman even notes it. Well, it's noted in the Observer stuff like that. That Heyman was very much against the idea of turning Brock Lesnar face at this point. He thought they should have stretched that out a lot longer.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So, but that's the end of Heyman in terms of creative capacity, at least for the time being. We'll pick that back up again in 2018 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But let's talk about other stuff, which is WWE itself, their financial situation, which is obviously now in 2021, like as good as it's ever been.
Which is crazy.
Wasn't so good in February of 2003 though, which is the company in their latest quarter earnings suffered a $26.6 million operating loss.
But is this the world? Like, what is this?
This was the world, yeah.
Okay, that's what I
So,
thought.
so they closed the world in on 25th of February of 2003.
Do
Essentially,
you blame them?
apparently their last strategy to do this was to make it as wrestling themed as possible, which meant that throughout February, wrestling talent was appearing daily at the event. They were sending at least one or two different wrestlers to the restaurant every single night to try and drum up some more interest. But then, with no apparent warning, the facility was just closed on the end of that day.
You know what? You're probably gonna laugh at me. I think they should try it again. I think that nowadays the wrestling fan is so much more niche that you can probably get a good audience.
I think it depends very much on the location because they were paying for like prime real estate in the heart of New York, heart of Manhattan. That's going to set you back even more than it would have been back then. I think
Yeah.
you need to. I mean, maybe somewhere in Connecticut or somewhere in Florida. Like near the
Florida
Performance
would be
Center.
good. Florida would be very good. Chicago. It has to be like a wrestling hub. So maybe Florida. I just think like there's enough of a fan base now that I think it would really do better.
So the total loss incurred by the restaurant for this period of time was $32.9 million between nearly 3 years of operating in the red and having to pay off contracts and leases going forward.
That's unfortunate.
We also mentioned this as well, both last week and during our No Way Out review. So if you are on the Patreon at the $10 tier and above, you could go back and listen to our No Way Out 2003 review. It's all there, as well as every other pay-per-view review we've done on this journey. The injury to Adam Copeland, Edge. He calls them Adam. Whenever he's talking about an injury in the newsletter, Meltzer always calls them by their real name.
Yeah, I've never understood that.
Yeah. I guess it's meant to be like more serious when it's like because it's like the real person, it's not the character.
Perhaps.
Yeah. It says that he received a spinal cord fusion surgery, which kept him out of action for over a year. Most interesting part of this little discussion that he goes in the newsletter is about how the wrestling style has become far more dangerous.
Yeah.
And now we're in 2021, and it's
And it's
arguably even more
worse.
dangerous than it was back then.
It's worse. I think like this week, the week that we're recording this alone, like 3 names have come down with major injuries and will be sidelined for quite a while.
Yeah, so it mentions over the past year, Edge suffered a shoulder injury, which put him out of action for a month, a torn knee ligament, which he was currently working through, as well as like back and neck pain, which was getting worse due to the wear and tear of taking repeated German suplexes and delivering spears.
All right, so I would like to go directly to the source here, but obviously we don't know Edge like that. Do you think is he just injury prone, or is it like, well, you spent the best years of your life falling from a ladder?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It's just he went through some of the most grueling and physical matches in WWE history and continued to work a completely full-time schedule.
On a regular basis at one
Yeah.
point. Like the TLC 3, the one on SmackDown,
Mm.
is like what, a month after WrestleMania?
I think it's May or June, so it'd probably be like 2 months afterwards. Yeah.
It's not that far off, and it like he suffered so much damage.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and yeah, that is to be expected in these sort of matches. It just builds you up. Just because Jeff Hardy has been relatively unscathed, pretty much, it feels like he's an exception, not the rule.
And I mean, if you look at Mick Foley, who it's a blessing that the man has all his wits about him and is still, in relatively good mental shape. Physically, he can't even walk up a flight of steps. He said this. Like, even if Jeff Hardy's okay, one day it's just going to hit him like a ton of bricks, and it sucks. But it's one of the reasons why I genuinely believe Ric Flair could have a semblance of a Ric Flair match today, but Edge won't be able to when Edge is Ric Flair's age.
In an interview that Edge gave with WWE.com following the surgery, he actually said that we're creating a generation of crippled wrestlers.
Wow. Well, he's spoken about this. He was in a very like low place, as one would be when they've come out of surgery, you know. But yeah, that's intense.
So yeah, that's the news side of things. Not exactly the most upbeat one of all time.
That was
but,
not the most upbeat one.
Well, to be fair, no one died at the very least, so that's
That's
like
true. That is true.
it could always be worse. But let's talk a little bit about Raw, which honestly, I'm not obviously don't want to bury the lead, but this episode of SmackDown was good. I'm not saying it was bad or anything like that, but based on what this episode of Raw was, I kind of wish that I'd been watching this episode of Raw.
I imagine it was pretty heavy because Stone Cold's back.
Well, he's not.
Is he not?
No, Eric Bischoff said at the beginning of the show that he had barred Steve Austin from the building, and Steve Austin never appeared on this show.
How? Really?
Yep, he appeared on the next show.
That seems like a miss.
But you know what? Who does appear on this show?
Who?
It's the motherfucking Rock in Toronto.
Oh yes. This is it's the Rock concert, is it not?
No, it's not the Rock concert. It's the one where he cuts that absolutely like one of the greatest heel promos of all time. Of the like when you're having a go at a city and stuff like that. Like the one where he says Toronto, or Toronto, or like, oh, he said Toronto. He said Toronto. Yay! It's just like he says like stronger than an ox, faster than a buck. Gonna get out of Toronto soon enough because the Maple Leafs suck or something like that. Something to that extent. But this is essentially the Rock show. This entire episode, he's basically been told by Vince McMahon that he can appear on any show that he wants to, and so he decided that because SmackDown, or essentially the argument was on this one that because SmackDown already has their championship picture sorted out because Brock Lesnar won the Royal Rumble when he's challenging Kurt Angle, then he's coming over to Raw and he's going to win a Battle Royal later on in the show to challenge Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship.
That's good. I recall, and maybe it's the next episode, but at some point they give him the option, don't they? Of like, we'll put you in the title match, or you could fight Stone Cold Steve Austin. Isn't that like how he ends up fighting Austin?
It potentially could be. I'm not I'm not as clued up on this period on the Raw side of things because I wasn't really watching Raw at this point, but we'll definitely find out next week at the very least when I do my little research into it. But other stuff that happened in the night that was also good is the Rock also had a almost equally as legendary backstage segment with the Hurricane.
The Hurricane, yeah. Yeah. Oh God,
this was the best thing. Yeah. Oh yeah. You go ahead.
It's the best thing that Gregory Helms has ever done on camera, I think, and he's a great wrestler. No disrespect, none of that. The Hurricane essentially saying the Scorpion King has a tiny ding-a-ling. I don't know if that was this particular instance, but it's good. And The Rock plays it like, obviously I know this guy's a fucking goof, but I'm just gonna like let it fly because I'm The Rock. The Rock gets intimidated by the tiny dingling thing and starts shaking his leg and saying, "Easy, big fella," as if his leg is his penis. The Rock can get away with doing stuff that nobody else can, and just talking about it makes me go, I miss The Rock. Like, I miss fun, and that just sounds like fun.
Yeah, so what happened obviously later in the night, which is Booker T won the 20-man Battle Royal, last eliminating The Rock, who basically spent most of the match on commentary.
Which is really good. The Rock sells this elimination. The visual with his eyes, like, oh my God, this guy just fucking eliminated me. Again, Rock, as you said, likely dominated this show, and if anything, something like that goes, we don't need a brand split. When I look at that and I go, if both of your shows are better, because like The Rock can just appear on both shows and create iconic moments. Yes, it sucks for the Eddie Guerreros and the Chris Benoits, and I'm not denying that. Like, that's been the best part of this journey. But also, sometimes you just gotta like say, hey, Rock's over. why, like, if they're over, and we should just enjoy them.
Well, maybe it's the argument that you can have a brand split, but you just have the one world champion.
That too. Which I'm a big fan of. That's another conversation for another day.
Earlier in the night, Booker T and Scott Steiner defeated Randy Orton and Batista in a tag team match as well. So Booker T's gone 2-0 for the night. So
is that the end of Randy Orton and Batista on Raw?
I'm trying to recall. I think they might appear on the next episode or whatever, but they're definitely out injured pretty soon.
Yeah, they're pretty much done, which is so unfortunate. I feel like we missed out on even better evolution moments because we didn't see them all interact here.
So other stuff that happened on this show, we had Chris Jericho and Christian versus Test and Stacy Keebler.
That's awful. God, they spend a lot of time wrestling women this year.
Yeah, so they attacked Test with they lost by DQ, Jericho and Christian, because they attacked Test with chairs, and then Jericho locked Stacy in the walls of Jericho. Jeff Hardy came out and attempted to save them, and Christian knocked him out. And then Shawn Michaels came out and actually saved them.
But are we at the point yet where he super kicks Jericho and tells him, "I'll see you at WrestleMania"?
No, not yet.
I mean, I think the Jericho Michaels feud is not only the saving grace of Raw, but it's the one that brings Shawn back. Am I wrong in that regard?
No, absolutely. Obviously he had great matches with Triple H, but the Jericho one is like thinking, okay, this guy is
he's
here now.
Just back. This is so good.
Jeff Hardy then defeated Christopher Nowinski in a match, but then he continued to attack him post-match because Chris Nowinski made fun of him being a loser prior to the match, and so the decision was reversed.
I don't know, man. That seems like a loser thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is Jeff Hardy in 2003.
Yeah.
Jazz defeated Jacqueline. Trish came down to return after a short hiatus in Toronto, had a fight with with Jazz. And so that helped set up for the triple threat match that's going to be happening in WrestleMania.
Trish at this era is finding herself. And obviously we all have sung her praises through the years. She's the best women's wrestler of all time.
Jerry Lawler defeated Chief Morley in a no disqualification match thanks to the Dudley Boys interfering and taking out Morley with a 3D.
I dare say that Jerry Lawler wrestles too much this year. Obviously, we won't cover any of it, but we see a lot of the King in the Ring in 2003.
And yeah, that's pretty much all the more important stuff that happened on Raw. In terms of the ratings, because I haven't covered that side of it, it was so the Raw episode for 24th February 2003 got a 4.0 in the ratings, so up from last week as well. SmackDown 27th February, a 3.98. So I've decided to call it a tie.
I think that's fair, and I think there's good reason. People tuned into Raw assuming they would get Austin. They got The Rock, and they stayed. I think people over on SmackDown knew they'd be getting more of Hogan and McMahon.
So let's get right into that then. So February 27th, 2003 from the Labatt Centre in London, Ontario. I feel quite weird not seeing any crates on the stage.
Yeah, it feels empty, doesn't it? The wooden box is there in your mind, Callum.
But the show starts off with Vince McMahon coming out to a very negative reception. He shares the unfortunate news that The Rock will not be here tonight because he has chosen to go to Raw.
I think that Vince McMahon as a character is so good in the sense that he told Eric Bischoff on Sunday basically to go fuck himself and got massively cheered and then was the biggest heel on the show by the end of the night.
That's the power of, again, it's the issue with Vince. It's the ever-going paradox, the fact that he's what arguably, I think in many people's mind, he is the greatest ever wrestling character of all time.
Right.
But that puts him on a pedestal that he expects everyone else to live up to.
if I can do it, why can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
And he's, because he's so willing to take the piss out of himself, he feels like no character is above that.
which in some ways he's absolutely right. It's just he should learn like not everybody should. Like,
No, exactly. He also shares that Hulk Hogan will not be here tonight, so crowd starts shouting asshole at him. Vince says Hogan is using the flimsy excuse of having a family emergency involving his son Nick, whereas
ugh.
he believes the real reason is that he's afraid of Vince. And no, I could not find any news relating to what the potential family emergency was.
Well, Nick is like a kid here, isn't he? Like
I don't know how old he was in 2003.
maybe 10 or so. Like maybe he was just a sick kid.
Vince says he screwed Hogan rather than the other way around, and he did so at No Way Out, explains how he did it. So essentially he says on this thing that the big selling point for you to stick around is that they're going to show the closing segment of the No Way Out pay-per-view on free TV.
Which if you've watched anything in this journey, I think you know that you don't buy that. Like,
No, it's just odd to me. It's just the idea that he's going to show, because I mean, we'll spoil it a little bit going ahead, but they don't show the whole match, but they show the ending of No Way Out 2003. And like, I'm just thinking, well, why would I buy the pay-per-view replay now? Like, I know there was more stuff that happened on that show, including Austin, but like, you've shown what the main event was, you showed how it finished, and it just feels weird. Like, I know they did this in WCW every now and again because they did that for Halloween Havoc '98
right.
because the actual pay-per-view fucked up for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, the pay-per-view just stopped.
Yes, they decided, okay, we're going to broadcast the Goldberg DDP match live on TV. But yeah, it just feels a bit odd to me that they're going to show part of an actual pay-per-view on this.
I think they must have done it just because maybe the buy rate wasn't that strong. Maybe they were banging on Austin for the replay, or maybe they just didn't care because they're like, everybody's gonna buy WrestleMania.
That's true. Well, Vince says the Hulkamania is dead, and Manamania is now running wild in WWE. And yeah, that's the end of his segment. It's promoted that it will be Brock Lesnar versus both members of Team Angle tonight in a handicap match. Find out more about that later on. But first, we have a mixed tag team match of Torrie Wilson and Funaki teaming up against Nidia and Jamie Noble.
Well, now why can't Torrey's friend Billy Kidman be here? What has Billy Kidman done that you just let him be in the ring with his wife? Like,
I mean, I guess he's still recovering from the loss of the
lose it.
Cruiserweight Championship.
Maybe.
But I'm okay with Funaki getting a spotlight here. You don't get to see him in the ring that often.
Yeah, and Funaki is great. At one point, he did say that Nidia wasn't Nidia, it was Dawn. It might have been Nidia. I forget who, but one of these women made him say, "I love SmackDown," and that was just.
Oh, it was Nidia. It was Nidia when she removed her top in front of him.
Yeah, she flashed him, and he's like, "I love SmackDown." It's a good time.
There's a couple of pro Tory signs in the crowd, including 316. I prefer Tory 24/7.
That's kind of cheeky, but I get it.
At least it's not creepy. It's not like saying like, "Show us your tits, Tory," or something like that.
I honestly thought you were going to make some kind of 69 reference.
Well, I'm not Tony.
I mean, not you, but
okay.
I thought the sign was going to say that.
Cole says that they will announce tonight who will be on the cover of Playboy from the SmackDown Diva contingent. Taz is still absolutely convinced it's going to be Stephanie.
Why would they do that?
What, Taz promoting the fact that it's going to be Stephanie?
Yeah, like they've been doing this. Like, if it's not Stephanie now, anybody that's wanted to see that is just going to be disappointed.
Oh, we'll talk about that in a little while. But Noble approaches commentary and says that Nidia should be on Playboy instead.
Yeah.
There are definitely worse choices.
There are definitely worse choices.
Funaki beats up Noble for a while before being stopped by a neckbreaker. Nidia tags in and starts working over Funaki. She nearly slips over, stomping on Funaki's chest.
Work rate. These girls did their best. I feel bad always harping on them.
Yeah, obviously it was better with the guys in the ring. So Noble blocks a tornado DDT. There's a double down clothesline. Nidia then goes up to the top rope and attempts a splash on Funaki. She misses. He eventually makes the tag into Torrie Wilson. She makes the slowest hot tag in history, where she's just hitting a couple of clotheslines. The biggest pop comes when the people see the top of her panties coming through her tights when she's on the top rope.
I'll say this: she's better in the ring today.
Oh yeah,
Like
she's definitely
at the Royal Rumble, she hit all these spots in like 20 seconds. She's better today.
She slaps Noble repeatedly until Noble slams her down by the back of the head, because we're allowed to beat up women in this era.
Yeah.
Noble chases Torrie around. If Funaki hits a baseball slide and then does a plunger to him on the outside. Torrie hits a Russian leg sweep for 2. Marie then arrives. She slaps Torrie right in front of the referee, but doesn't get a DQ. But then Torrie runs Nidia into Marie, rolls up Nidia, gets the victory.
Classic Divas schoolgirl finish, am I right?
Yeah. For the standards of the time, this was tolerable. I'll say that much. But the more interesting stuff happened after the match, which is Stephanie comes out. She's like coming onto the ramp. She's smiling. She says that this announcement is for mature audiences only, because it's about the cover and fully nude pictorial for a SmackDown Diva in Playboy. She then decides to tease the audience about wanting to see one of these women in the buff. She shows off her bra strap and starts like touching her breasts.
Yeah, mature audiences only.
Do you know that she invented women's wrestling and is the leader of the women's revolution?
Yeah, Stephanie is the one who decided to stop calling them divas. Stephanie did it all.
She then congratulates herself, basically trying to try and tease the people by saying she's going to be in Playboy.
At some point, they had to have the conversation, and this hammers it home for me. Like, they had to.
But she says that she isn't going to be in Playboy. The crowd gets slightly disappointed, but instead that she's excited because she gets to close the deal to get Torrie Wilson to be in the magazine instead, and the crowd are excited because it's Torrie. If you're not going to get Stephanie, Torrie is. I mean, for most people, Torrie would be the first option, but if you're not going to get Stephanie, Torrie's the second best option, probably.
So like I'll say it, like Stephanie probably would have been high on my list. Like Stephanie, especially at this point, looks great. Like Triple H fell into a real nice role there with everything that happened to him in his life. But obviously Torrie is like the quintessential early 2000s hot.
So yeah, Torrie's going to be in Playboy, and we'll discuss probably a bit
more
more
of
that. And we'll discuss a bit more of that when we get to WrestleMania 19. We do that extra special.
You ever drink any Miller Lite, Callum?
No, I mean I'm a non-drinker. So and if I've tried like beers every now and again. There's only one beer that I've actually like somewhat enjoyed, and that was when I went to the Czech Republic. And I was kind of convinced to drink it because you kind of can't go to the Czech Republic without drinking beer at some point. It's kind of a rule.
I think that Miller Lite may be the perfect beer for WrestleMania, don't you?
Yeah, I think that it looks like, yeah, I don't know how to really weave that into something. Yeah, girls are going to get their tits out. Yeah, it's just like...
I'm just saying that Miller Lite is good with WrestleMania. That's all I said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, we'll be talking about that. We'll get to see some Miller Lite girls involved in WrestleMania 19 as well, so that's good.
I think, for real, so like, for those who don't know, I'm alluding to the Miller Lite catfight girls. Because this became a thing for a minute. And of course, like, this is what WWE has chosen to run and get on WrestleMania, not anything cool like Jay-Z or Fabulous or anything that we could have actually shown in the future.
You know, we've seen one of the Miller Lite catfight girls already on this journey.
Where were they in the HLA?
Yep.
Of course they were. Were they?
Well, one of them was.
Were they unforgiven?
Yeah, I believe her name was Katana Baker. She was in the HLA segment that involves Stephanie, actually.
Yep. Wow. I mean, maybe that's how they were so easy to get them on there.
So during the commercial break, Torrie thanks Stephanie. Stephanie says it won't interfere in the Girls Gone Wild. They'll shoot the cover next week, all that stuff. But in the background, Brian Kendrick appears in front of her office door. He introduces himself again. She calls him Naked Boy.
That's gotta be embarrassing.
Kendrick said that he was just trying to prove what he's willing to do to get a job on SmackDown, and says tonight he wants to prove that further by taking on Kurt Angle.
Why didn't he start with that first?
Stephanie kind of laughs it off, but he says that he's serious. She says that if he lasts 5 minutes with Kurt Angle tonight, she'll sign him to the main roster. He thanks her, and then that's basically okay. So we've got a 5-minute challenge with Brian Kendrick's future career on the line.
They should do more of that. I know you can't now with NXT, and everybody kind of knows everybody that's coming in, but I like stuff like this, because if you don't know who this person is, or if you're invested in the random guy who's streaking in Nike Shocks, and you're like, oh man, I'm rooting for this guy. Like, this is good storytelling.
You want to Eddie Guerrero versus Nunzio.
Has this match ever happened? Like,
what, ECW or something?
Definitely not in ECW, because they're in different eras, but they never do anything serious with one another.
No, I don't believe so. No,
that's a shame.
So I felt it quite odd that Eddie's still coming out to Latino Heat, even though they've started the Viva La Raza stuff.
Right, they just haven't put together this song.
So Eddie at one point nearly misses up a flipping roll off the back of Nunzio early, but he recovers to hit a drop kick. He does one of his lucha flying arm drags to Nunzio. Nunzio turns the tide by attacking Eddie in the corner. Eddie takes him down, and that leads to Chavo and Stamboli squaring up at ringside. Chuck trips Eddie over while he's running to give Nunzio the advantage. And then there's just more work on the backstage where Chuck punches Eddie in the face with the referee distracted. Nunzio drops a knee and gets 2 count from it. Eddie ends the assault with a tilt world backbreaker. Eddie throws a few punches, and Nunzio does one of the best punch drunk sells, where just he's been beaten a few times and then he just falls straight forward in his face, very much like the Ric Flair flop.
Well, it's funny because I'm watching Chuck Palumbo here, and I just keep thinking, good Lord, Stephanie had the audacity to call Billy and Chuck the greatest tag team in WWE history 3 months ago.
Eddie hits an electric chair for 2. Are you surprised how much we've seen the electric chair? And it's good. I can't recall the last time I ever saw an electric chair in modern wrestling.
Yeah, they don't do it. I see it if it's a part of a Tower of Doom, or if it's a set up to a German, or a set up to something else.
The one we know.
Nobody does just an electric chair drop, and it's a good move.
So Eddie rolls through a frog splash attempt. Then he and Nunzio trade small packages until Eddie wins thanks to a handful of tights. So it was short. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stealing the win. It was short, but it was good for what was allocated to it. The FBI attack the Guerreros post-match. Rikishi comes down, evens the odds, clears the ring. So really, they're full-blooded Italians at 0 for 2.
But you don't understand. So they're a major threat because Jamie Noble's cousin Nunzio is a killer, and Chuck Palumbo was in the greatest tag team in WWE history.
Yeah, and Johnny Stamboli once severed his urethra on a leg drop.
That's right. And one day he'll be killer spelled backwards. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Relic, yeah.
It's weird. For as much as I do credit this time period, there's a lot of hit and miss.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's true in every period of time. Just right now, there's a lot of miss.
Not so right now, there's a lot of miss.
Paul Heyman arrives in Stephanie's office. Stephanie informs him that Brock will get to name his own stipulation for tonight's handicap match, and that Brock has decided that if he wins tonight, he can face any member of Team Angle he wants next week inside a steel cage.
That's stupid. My stipulation would have been, if I win, I'm the champion already. When you think about it...
Well, I'm pretty sure Stephanie would have refused.
I guess that's true.
Heyman says that, like, basically he does his whole, you can't do that, it's not fair. And Stephanie says that life isn't fair, throws him out. Really, life isn't fair. And she probably threw him out of her office when they fired him from Creative as well.
There you go. That should be the title of this episode. Life isn't fair.
Yeah, so commentary talk about No Way Out in front of like a still image of what WWE.com looked like in 2003. And honestly, it looks easier to navigate than it does now.
And it looks like an actual website.
Mm.
I hate websites today. I think they're far too bland and minimalistic. And back in 2003, people actually cared.
They also show Edge being taken away after his attack by Team Angle, with Taz saying they'll be out of action for around a year. Obviously discussed that already.
Yep. We're creating a generation of crippled wrestlers.
Lesnar and Benoit talk backstage with Benoit. God, well, I wish he was just crippled. Unfortunately, that's kind of the issue. With Benoit saying that Angle was a cruel and sadistic bastard. Look who's talking. He will do anything to keep his title at WrestleMania. Benoit says they caused Edge's injury and neck surgery, which Benoit knows all too well. Benoit tells them to beat Team Angle tonight and then do to one of them what they did to Edge inside a cage. Lesnar says that he's going to win, but asks Benoit what's he going to do if Team Angle target him next. Benoit says that he also has friends before saying to someone in another room that he'll see him at ringside later tonight.
Which is a good tease.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to bring this up because we talked about Edge and Benoit just said it there too. I think the saddest thing about the fusion surgery is that it's literally nicknamed the wrestler's surgery to have, spinal fusion like this. Mm-hmm. And that's not normal. Like, that shouldn't be a normal thing.
No, but yeah, it's like one of those only things that only wrestlers get this injury. And that's, I'm going to say not only wrestlers, but only wrestlers get this injury and then they get this sort of surgery in order to make sure they can actually work again. Because most people that would get this injury was like, well, I can't do anything remote, super physical ever again.
Right.
So
I just think it's like it's a really sad reflection of the industry, and I'm glad we don't see a lot of it today, where it's like, oh, this guy broke his neck, this girl broke her neck.
No, but a lot of them seem like they're trying to do that now.
Yeah, because they are.
Yeah, I think you basically just put a picture of Shotzi Blackheart whenever you mention that sort of thing because, like,
Sasha Banks, I love Sasha Banks, but she tries to fold herself on those suicide dives, and it ain't pretty.
So we got Matt Hardy and Shannon Moore against Chris Benoit and a mystery tag team partner. Matt's pants are a size 34 at the waist, and he thinks that sweet potatoes are delicious.
Yeah, that comes back, quite frankly, when he's doing the broken stuff, and I think that's hilarious. He must really be a fan of sweet potatoes.
So before we get into the match itself, Josh Matthews is interviewing Hardy backstage. He says that winning the Cruiserweight title was a victory for Mattitude. He then wishes Edge a speedy recovery. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be thinking that in a year or two, but
yeah.
But he says he might have avoided that twist of fate if he'd been a Mattitude follower.
Oh,
well, you might have avoided that twist of fate if he was
a... Yeah, you're in for the twist of fate, let me tell you.
Benoit comes out alone, but soon after, it's the return of the man-beast Rhyno.
Good replacement for Edge, because he's like Edge's friend, and they both do the spear. I still think Rhyno should have been a bigger deal. It's a shame that he wasn't.
Do you know how old Rhyno is now?
Today?
Yep.
Probably 42.
Wow, you actually went younger than I. So he's 45. But that means that at this point in time, he was in his mid to late 20s.
Well, I know he's young, and that's why I always felt it was wrong that they just never ran with him.
He gets a huge pop when he comes back here.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's in Canada, so the Canadians are smart wrestling fans. They do give big pops, but he's out here and just like everyone's behind him. Benoit immediately whips Moore into a Rhyno clothesline. The crowd's going wild for him as he beats the hell out of Shannon Moore. Benoit tags in. He throws Moore around for a little while until Hardy trips him over. Hardy then takes over on Benoit for a while. Benoit has to sell for a bit. He hits a side effect for 2. There's loud ECW and Rhyno chants. There's more. Shannon Moore hits a back suplex on Chris Benoit. Shannon Moore.
But Benoit would sell it.
Yeah, I know. Hardy sets up to do the poetry in motion with Shannon Moore, but Moore then misses Benoit. Benoit hits a German suplex to Hardy. Rhyno gets a hot tag. He runs wild. He hits a spine buster to Hardy. He catches Moore, attempted a spinning kick, lifts him into a power slam. Benoit follows up with a diving headbutt to Moore. Hardy knocks Benoit out of the ring. Rhyno then gores him down and pins him. I
love the gore.
Yeah, the gore's great. I find it odd. I mean, obviously, I don't find it odd that Rhyno won because he's a big guy coming back. You do want to give him a win. But you've got Shannon Moore in this match, and you pin the Cruiserweight champion.
Yeah. That's, maybe that's just to establish Rhyno. I don't know. That seems like a miss.
But like the reception for Rhino was great. His performance was great as well. So yeah, they really they could have done more with Rhyno. You know, apparently the rumors circulating the Observer prior to this thing because obviously he's been brought back to replace Edge's role because the idea was for WrestleMania before Edge's injury that it was going to be Team Angle versus Los Guerreros versus Edge and Chris Benoit in that triple threat tag team match.
Right.
So the original plan for Rhyno, initially they wanted to bring him back on Raw, and he was going to be part of the Evolution stable.
I don't buy that for a fucking second.
Well, that's what the Observer was saying. I can't verify whether it's true or false, but that was
Triple H is so definitive about Batista and Randy that I just don't buy it.
No, and that's again. That's
to be clear. Like I would love Rhyno in Evolution. I think it's a great fit, but I just can't see it.
The other option prior to that was also he would come back as a heel and he would be Matt Hardy's bodyguard.
That I see way more.
But no, he's been brought back as babyface and he'll be teaming with Chris Benoit for the foreseeable future.
Is Dean Malenko retired at this point?
Yes.
I see. Because like that's always an option.
He retired in 2001, I believe. I think we actually covered that in the 2001 Wrestling Odyssey.
That's a shame because like I feel like there are other. Where's Perry Saturn at this point? Like
he got released a couple of months ago.
There are
he'll be in TNA in a couple of months.
Like there are options. There are names that Benoit could have teamed with. I like the Rhyno pairing. I mean, it to me is a huge downgrade from Benoit versus Angle, but I like the Rhyno pairing enough.
Yeah, it's just a case of I guess their partnership was based on the fact they both undergone neck surgery.
Yeah.
So, they replay Nathan Jones's interview from last week with him referencing the biggest dog in the yard. As then we see Undertaker walking backstage. He hops on his bike. He comes down to the ring on his bike later on.
Did I ever tell you that I hate the American Badass Undertaker?
Yeah, well, there are worse things to have done on this show. Like Undertaker cuts a promo about A-Train and how he got his attention at No Way Out when he attacked him. He tells A-Train it's time to shut up and fight. A-Train comes out, but he's joined by Paul Heyman, who says that A-Train is his new client, which is funny enough because Heyman's only around for one more week. So that was a really good partnership there.
I think Heyman, and we see it a little bit with Team Lesnar later, they could have done so much more with Paul Heyman, and it's like this weird apprehension.
Yeah, so
I mean, what do you think? Like, that's just me. I think Heyman could have added to the Big Show and A-Train tag team. Maybe he could have brought them further along to the tag titles or something.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of possibilities they could have done there. I just feel like I think that his issues backstage hindered their willingness to use him on TV.
Probably.
Yeah. But so he brings out the Big Show as well to join them. So now both giants are outside surrounding the ring. Taker tries starting to fight them off for a while, but then the double team takes over. Show chokeslams Taker. A-Train hits a Vader splash on him. A-Train holds Taker on the ring apron as Show grabs a steel chair, so he's going to do some damage there. But he's stopped by Nathan Jones, charging the ring, barging Big Show off of the apron. He then fights free of A-Train's grip and he throws a flurry of kicks, none of which hit A-Train. But then again, I guess they weren't meant to, because A-Train's not exactly selling any of them. And A-Train just goes running out of the ring. The heels retreat. Undertaker and Nathan Jones stand toe-to-toe in the middle of the ring. So, yep, that's your... Well, what's supposed to be your WrestleMania program right there.
I would have preferred Nathan Jones versus Undertaker.
Well, apparently that was the other option, which was either it's going to be this tag team match or they're going to turn Nathan Jones immediately and have that match instead.
So what I would have done here is I would have done either Big Show again or Nathan Jones. The thing that we get, where it's a handicap match that was built to be a tag match, is the weakest thing in the history of the streak. I said it either at No Way Out or last week. You can take Giant Gonzalez, you can take King Kong Bundy. I know they exist. I know they are poor. However, it's just, this is the worst. This is the worst.
We've shown another replay of Lesnar destroying Cena's knee a couple of weeks ago. Cena is then seeing a laptop computer cutting another fiery rap promo on Lesnar, saying how he's going to make him bleed and how Lesnar stopped him from reaching the brass ring, all this other stuff. He's still wearing the Harlem Globetrotter stuff. He really loves the Harlem Globetrotters.
Are the Harlem Globetrotters not the epitome of what John Cena ends up becoming in wrestling?
That's pretty much, yeah.
Like, yeah, I think it fits.
Like, it's the idea that wasn't that the CM Punk promo that he cut about how he's not like an underdog. He's the
Yankees.
Yeah, and that was like something that really got under his skin. It's bad, but you know it's true.
I'll never forget that. A man insults your father, your wife, nothing. A man calls you the New York Yankees, and as a Massachusetts native, that's just too far. Like,
so as per usual, I want to pick out a few lyrics here. Cena's great at this point. Like, his promos are awesome.
He's found his rhythm.
So, you're all bark and no bite. You stole my spotlight. I'm the great white hope. You're the great white hype.
Okay.
So that line would not work in 2020, 21.
I mean, wasn't that long ago that they tried literally just calling Sheamus the Great White? So maybe not.
If you're an animal, then I'm going on safari. I'm rocking PS2. You can't figure out Atari.
That's real good. That's right on the time frame. I love that.
Gonna show the world you can't even walk in my shoe. Your finisher's the F5. Well, mine's the FU.
Not yet, it's not, but it will be.
But yeah, that's him naming his finisher now.
I think, because he doesn't come back for a while, right?
Yeah, and then when he comes back, he immediately starts
literally the FU. Okay, yeah. That's really good.
Yeah, it was a great promo. Cena, like, at this point, you look at Cena and think, okay, if he gets better in the ring, and obviously he didn't need to get too much better, but like if he gets better in the ring, and he just is allowed to just cut all of these promos as much as he is doing right now, he is going to be a megastar. And it proved to be.
And he certainly was like the last megastar in WWE history.
Mm-hmm. Now we have Kurt Angle versus Brian Kendrick in a 5-minute challenge.
And how do you feel about it?
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. And like you say, they should do more of this stuff. They went through a period where they used to do a lot of Kurt Angle had invitational matches where he would do 5-minute challenges. And that's where we get that, I would say, one of the greatest squash matches of all time with him versus Roderick Strong.
My favorite, it involves Brian Kendrick, but it's him in London in 2007. That they got to go through these really short bursts of matches where the guys who are in them know how to work, and I love this kind of stuff.
So let's see how we go here. So Brian Kendrick has to give Tony Chimel like his hometown and wait during his entrance because Chimel has no idea what it is. Angle's like smiling during his entrance. He's not taking it seriously at all. He gets down in referee's position, which he did when in that match with Shane McMahon from King of the Ring.
Yeah, I think this is his way of like, I can take you. Yeah, here, I'll even give it to you, and I'll have your ass, you know?
So Kendrick mounts him, but he's basically just like holding on to Angle. Angle easily rolls out, he mounts him, he slaps him around the back of the head a few times. He like punks Kendrick out a few times. He gets on his knees, closes his eyes, puts his hands behind his back, saying he's allowing Kendrick to throw a first punch. So Kendrick then kicks him in the face and throws forearms before running into a belly-to-belly throw.
I like it though. He tried to take advantage, and he gets caught for it.
Angle places Kendrick on the middle turnbuckle and then punches him to the floor in a really loud shot because this Angle is a killer.
And Angle is the best when he's killer. Yes, he's fun and he's funny, but Wrestling Machine Kurt Angle is the best Kurt Angle.
He applies the ankle lock, but then lets go immediately because he sees there's still about 2.5 minutes left on the clock, so he wants to inflict some more damage. He lifts Kendrick up for an angle slam, holds him up for a second, then drops him on his face.
Beautiful.
Kendrick, he goes for a German suplex. Kendrick gets out of it. He flips back, hits a knee strike to Angle, who kicks out at one, and then he nails an enziguri. So Kendrick's starting to get some fire in, and the crowd is really getting behind him. Keeps dodging Angle for a while, but then he goes for his slice bread. Angle blocks it, decks him with a clothesline.
Vicious.
He sees the clock's running down, but Kendrick is still fighting back. He delivers forearms. Angle then hits the Angle slam, pins him with 2 seconds left on the clock.
Damn.
A lot of fun.
Close. This close.
Awesome match.
Awesome match, though. Very fun. And it makes me sad that they didn't do more with Kendrick.
Do you think this it's amazing that this is billed as a 5-minute challenge? This was the second longest match on the entire show.
That's indicative of the time frame. We've talked before about how much they cram into 2 hours and how little of it is time spent in the ring.
So Angle cuts a promo post-match saying that Team Angle had nothing to do with Edge at No Way Out and they can't prove it.
That's true.
He then addresses Kendrick, saying that he's got guts, but he won't make it in wrestling. That's false.
Yeah, it's false, but he was right at the time.
He tells everyone to give him a hand, and then says this is for Lesnar, and decks Kendrick again. He destroys Kendrick around ringside. He whips him into the steps, into the ring post. He then hits an F5 in the ring.
I'm glad that, I don't know, it doesn't seem right looking at Kurt Angle use that. No. He's not bulky enough.
So we then have a segment where Tony Chimmel introduces Sylvain Grenier, the referee for the Rock and Hogan match.
I know why they used him, and I know what they were going for. Sylvain really isn't my cup of tea.
So he cut the promo in French to start with, and then says he's been asked by Mr. McMahon to introduce this segment. The crowd keeps chanting arsehole at him. They show the conclusion of the Rock Hogan match we discussed before. We don't really need to go over it. We discussed that on the No Way Out side of things. But suffice to say, Hogan loses due to McMahon screwing him.
Right.
We then see exclusive footage of a bloody Hogan after No Way Out asking Stephanie where Vince is. Hogan screams he's going to beat the hell out of Vince. Commentary then says that Hogan will be on SmackDown next week, as well as Undertaker versus A-Train.
Well, one of those things sells tickets, the other one doesn't.
Paul Heyman then gives Team Angle a pep talk about how Lesnar wants to penetrate their defensive wall and separate Kurt Angle in a cage next week. Hudson Bender would say that won't happen. We then also see Lesnar stretching backstage, and he snaps the resistance band that he was using.
Which is good, because Brock Lesnar is a monster, and when you're the size of Brock Lesnar, those are probably easy to break.
We then have Brock Lesnar versus Team Angle in a handicap match. So Brock Lesnar and Haas start it off, and while Haas gets in a few little shots early, Lesnar dominates soon after, shoulders to the gut, throws him across the ring, does his backbreaker fall away slam move. Benjamin tags in, he's immediately hit with a belly to belly. Goes for a DDT, but he's lifted and driven into the corner by Lesnar, who's dominating over the time. But Benjamin eventually gets a foot up to a charging Lesnar. Huss clotheslines him over the top rope to the floor. So that was almost bizarre to see, even though this guy's a tag team champion.
I think that's because, well, he's Brock, But I think these guys have fought in too much. You know, like we at this point have seen Brock Lesnar toss around Team Angle a lot. So on one hand, they're like bigger than everybody else because they came right in and won the belt. And then on the other hand, there's like we keep seeing them just get punked out.
So Lesnar is able to recover, but he's soon tripped by Angle at ringside. Lesnar chases him around, grabs his legs, but this allows Benjamin to hit him with a baseball slide. Huss then drives his head into the ring post. Lesnar hits Heyman with a chair to the back. So basically, it's 4-on-1 rather than 2-on-1 here.
Which is good because we know what it's setting up.
So Huss grapevines Lesnar with a choke. So Lesnar, which is now becoming like a trademark spot for Lesnar, gets out of the grapevine, gets onto his feet with Huss holding onto him still. But instead of running into the corner like he's done with Angle and Cena, he decides, I'm going to climb up with this grown man on my back to the middle rope and then fall backwards.
I like it.
It was awesome.
It's so vicious.
Sid Vicious.
I said it's so vicious, not Sid Vicious. Although Brock Lesnar's got a little bit of Sid Vicious in him.
Oh, absolutely. Just so much better worker than he is.
Much better.
It's like what Sid you'd want Sid to be.
But yes, very, very cool spot from Brock Lesnar.
So Lesnar makes his comeback. He throws both members of Team Angle around. He knocks Angle off the apron, but this allows Hudson Benjamin to hit a German suplex / super kick combo and gets a 2 count for it. Benjamin throws both out of the corner. He then tries to F5 Huss, but Benjamin catches Huss going down and saves him. But that's a very short reprieve as Lesnar pushes Benjamin into Huss. Then he F5s Benjamin and gets the pin on him to win the match. And that basically leaves Team Angle in a very rough situation because Lesnar grabs Heyman post-match. He goes for the elusive F5 that he's been trying to hit for months at this point, but Angle again trips him at the knee, saves his agent, gets out of the ring with him. Angle and Heyman then... Oh, go ahead.
No, keep going, because that's not happening next week.
No, because Angle and Heyman are then arguing on the ramp because they're basically of the mindset that he's going to choose Kurt Angle to fight him in a steel cage, and so he can weaken the champion before the match at WrestleMania. Lesnar cuts a promo about next week as Angle looks completely distraught. Lesnar then points up the ramp and says, I'm facing you. And then Angle just assumes that he said to him. And then Lesnar clarifies, Paul Heyman.
Which is very good.
Heyman sells this so good.
Heyman knows that he ain't gonna be around for much longer because he's been working his ass off for the last week and a half.
Yeah, he stares back at Lesnar with just a frozen expression on his face of complete fear and despair, whereas Angle behind him is smirking.
Because he's
dodged a bullet.
Fucking free, yeah.
And so it's going to be next week. The main event will be Brock Lesnar versus Paul Heyman inside a steel cage.
And that's essentially the end of Paul Heyman's SmackDown.
Yep.
Legitimately.
Yeah, so this is obviously our penultimate episode. It was another good show coming out of No Way Out. Definitely there'll be some more to talk about next week as well, but overall, pretty solid edition.
I would say so.
Yeah. So what do we have to look forward to next week? Well, we have obviously that steel cage match. We have a return cruiserweight title match with Matt Hardy taking on Billy Kidman.
Stack show.
We have obviously Hulk Hogan returns. Some obviously not in an in-ring capacity, but to build up some more stuff with him and McMahon.
I think maybe one of the only cards in wrestling history, if not the only card, where you could say Paul Heyman and Hulk Hogan are on the same card, and Heyman is a wrestler on this night.
Chris Benoit and Rhyno will take on Team Angle.
Good, but I'm sure they'll wear it thin real quick.
And there's also, as well as the cruiserweight title match, there's also a number one contendership triple threat match featuring Rey Mysterio, Jamie Noble, and Tajiri.
I like it because
that should be good.
That's a very good way to end this journey and say, hey, the wrestling here is what really sold it.
So yeah, that will be our final, I guess, honest to goodness edition of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, where we actually go through and review some shows. It's not quite over at that point because we might do. I'm still like mulling over the idea of doing like just a recap show where we go over some of our favorite moments from the journey and maybe hand out a few awards or something like that to some people across the journey. But that will happen like either the week after or something like that. It's not exactly a huge rush because there's no time based on this thing.
Right.
But then after that, we will also be doing, in some form or fashion, a review or a watch along or something of that ilk of WrestleMania 19, the greatest WrestleMania of all time.
The greatest WrestleMania of all time. And I've said this recently. To me, it feels like the standout WrestleMania that sets the tone for like what we know WrestleMania to be.
Do you think it's weird? Again, we're just this is a complete tangent. Do you think it's weird the greatest WrestleMania of all time took place in Seattle?
And not in New Orleans or New York or Florida?
Well, just any city that isn't Seattle.
I think it's just weird that they, like, especially now, it's become so formulaic. Like, other states have big venues. It's just, they don't go to them.
But yeah, so that will be what we'll talk about obviously next week and going forward. But as for now, just going to leave you with a few plugs as per usual. So we've mentioned the Patreon already. At the $10 tier or above, there's obviously you can access the Darkcast feed where we put on a few extra shows every now and again, and that's where you'll find all of our reviews of the 2002 and 2003 pay-per-views that we've done alongside this series. If you're able to extend it even further to maybe the Pick Your Poison tier, which is $50 a month, you'll be able to basically command us like your little minions and tell us to do something that you want us to do. Obviously, within reason, we're not going to. If you give us $50, we're not going to review every single episode of Raw alongside this period of time as well.
But if you give us 300, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's something to obviously discuss. But any amount of money that you can give, whether it's $1, whether it's $10, $50, $1,000, whatever you can give, it's all greatly appreciated, of course.
Although I should note that there is a tier there that once you give $1,000, you're essentially a producer of the channel, and you might even tell Tony what to do.
So other than that, the other monetary ways you can support us, of course, is through the merchandise shops at Redbubble and TeePublic. Just check out all the Smark Out Moment stuff on there as well. But if you can't support us financially, we understand the times are tight, then there's other ways you can just support the brand of Smark Out Moment. One way, of course, is going to the website, checking out all of the articles on there at every point in time, which go like every single week or anything to that extent. Sharing the articles around, liking them, leaving comments. Obviously, going on to our Facebook and Twitter, finding us on social media at Smark Out Moments for both of those. And joining the Megamaniacs. So it's facebook.com/group/the Megamaniacs, which is like just where you can get involved with some like-minded wrestling fans. Other stuff, of course, Fanboys Anonymous. That's Tony's geek culture side of things, where we're currently doing a series with him, of course, Review to a Kill. So check out if you're interested in the Bonds franchise at all, or you're interested in learning more about it, as me and Rob both are, because we're joining Tony on this journey. It's basically his project. He knows all the Bond stuff. We're just tagging along. But yeah, if you want to pick up some stuff like that's going up on their YouTube channel every single week. There's a new edition. But of course, check out their website, check out their Patreon, their Redbubble, TeePublic, all the other stuff. Them on social media. It's all great stuff as well. Rob, you're very busy.
Yes, I am very busy. So, of course, I'm over on Fightful.com. I'm over on WrestleZone.com. I do the Wednesday Night War podcast weekly with Alex Pulaski and Sean Ross Sapp over on Fightful's YouTube channel. I do an Impact recap show over on WrestleZone's Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday morning. I do the SmackDown Double Down with Colin Tessier on Saturday morning. I am basically never not talking into a microphone. And if you want to keep up with me, just check out Twitter at DeFelice. And yeah, thank you for coming on this journey as we reach our final destination.
Yep, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. And yeah, we got one more stop to go. So hopefully you'll be joining us for that one. And hopefully you enjoyed this edition this week's edition as well. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.